Welcome back. I'm Steph Smart and I'm here with Paul Blackburn, and we're covering the topic on managing your emotions and other people's after a traumatic or natural disaster event.
Sometimes we don't need a natural disaster to know how to manage our emotions. Quite often they get out of control. The big problem is that we don't go to school and sit in a lesson called These are Your Emotions and How to Handle Them. So most of us are kind of educated in terms of what you should do and what you shouldn't do based on how people respond. So as a youngster, when I was growing up, my dad was pretty angry kind of a character. We never said, is he going to be angry today? We just said, when is he going to be angry today? What I learnt was I better not be angry, otherwise I'd get a clip over the ear because he'd say, I'll give you something to be angry about. So I learnt that you don't be angry. As a male, I learnt you don't be sad, and of course you better not be scared. And so there was a whole bunch of emotional training that was not training, but it happens every day. And so I grew up unable to cry or understand what fear was doing to me, and anger was boiling up and ruining my life. So that's without a disaster. It's just going to make everything worse. So if we look at that and kind of skip past all of that and go, what do we got to do? Essentially, we've got to be good at handling our own emotions so that we have the capacity to help others.
Yep.
Essentially, if my emotions are taken care of, so if I've got my stuff sorted, if I've got all my shit in one sock and it's sorted, then bingo, I can be able to read someone else's emotions and know when that something's not right. So if I'm all boiled up, there's no chance of me reading that. So that's the reason behind that. What it means, you've got to get anger out of your system by using some kind of physical mechanism. We've talked about punching bag. We've talked about helping people to cry by sitting with them. Fear is a matter of acknowledging it and acknowledging whereabouts in your body it is. And letting it be there, because if you allow it to exist and name it and and give it a description, it dissipates by itself, and we can go ahead and do the things that we want to do. Those are the three major negative emotions. There are two that kind of back it up, which are shame and guilt. They're kind of related. Guilt's actually a version of anger, but if I just say to you, look, watch out for the big five, that's anger, sadness, fear, shame, and guilt. Those are the things that are going to do us damage. They're the things that are going to do damage to others. Therefore, if we get ours handled, then we can help other people handle theirs. You don't have to be an expert at this. All you've got to do is be able to recognise what's going on for somebody else, adjust yourself so that you don't reflect them. If someone's angry, you don't need to be angry back. That's just going to create a conflict. So if you can remain cool, calm and collected, and that means, like I said, you've got your own anger handled, then you can be useful in those circumstances, because you can say something that's going to help calm them down or get them through the situation, or warn everybody to stand back, or do something that's a contribution rather than you're angry too and you're just inflaming the whole thing. That actually applies to all the others. So with sadness, like I said before in a previous video, if we sit with someone, you might find yourself in tears as well, because we tend to get on the same wavelength as the people that we relate to.
Yep.
People we don't relate to, we don't get on the same wavelength, and so we just figure they're crazy or whatever. So if you can allow yourself to be with someone who's sad, that's basically going to facilitate the sadness coming out of their system. Really what I'm talking about is suppressed emotions. When they go inside, it's like a Coke bottle. You shake it up, sooner or later you're going to have an outpouring. So the anger outpouring is easy to describe. The sadness outpouring is easy to see as well. The fear outpouring, that's mostly going to show up as panic attacks.
Yep.
And so that's really, you just kind of got to keep your eyes out for the people you care about and just watch how they're reacting to things. And if they're a bit more sensitive or a bit overly reactive, then probably the fear bucket's filled up and it needs a bit of emptying. And the way that we empty the fear bucket is to talk about what the physical sensations are. Shame responds best to speaking it out. And so if I've got a skeleton in the closet, then I don't want everyone to know about it, because I figure that I'll get judged as somebody who's, done some awful thing. But we've all got skeletons in the closet. And so as long as we respect the person that's going to tell us about what they're ashamed of, then what happens is I get enormous admiration for that. And so within your smaller communities, within families and within tight-knit groups, you can say, look, I'm ashamed that I blah, 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 whatever it was. Speaking shame gets it out. The message of shame is don't say, don't say, don't say. when in actual fact, when you do say, you turn out to be a brave model for everybody else. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous runs on. If you go there, you've got to stand up and say, I'm Paul Blackburn, I'm an alcoholic. You tell your story and everybody doesn't say anything, they just clap and say thank you.
Yeah.
That formula has been working for 100 years. And so we know that it works. It might seem odd, people come from the mulga, then the reality is that the overwhelming temptation is to not talk.
Yeah.
The reality is we get universal admiration because sparingly and at the right time and under the right circumstances, we do say what's going on for us.
So I guess what you're talking about there is being vulnerable. And if you're vulnerable, then it may encourage other people around you to feel safe to be vulnerable too.
Yeah, and the gateway there is to understand there's a difference between weakness and vulnerability.
Yep.
So weakness is not having the strength to cope with that. I would say strength is the inner strength to say, well, if you want to judge me for that, go right ahead, but it's not affecting me.
Yep.
So in our culture, we're taught weakness is to say something that I'm not good at or that I've suffered from or that I was hopeless at because everyone's going to criticise me.
Yep.
In reality, strength is, well, whether you criticise me or not doesn't bother me. It's none of my business what you think.
Yep.
So vulnerability works. It really works in terms of how we connect with each other. And so if we use the Alcoholics Anonymous example, the person who stands up and tells their story, and usually it's a pretty horror story, pretty much horrible story, then what they do is they gain the respect and the admiration of all the people who are listening because they were willing to go there. So vulnerability is the number one tool when it comes to healing emotions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about anger, sadness, fear, shame, and there's another one, emotion. Guilt.
Yeah, guilt is not necessarily bigger or smaller than any of the others, but it's the final one in what we call the big five. And guilt is basically anger turned against myself. So, I worked with a guy one time in a community. He backed the tractor out 4 o'clock in the morning, ran over the 3-year-old, and he was just ratchet. And when the community got me to come and work with them, this guy was just overcome with guilt. And I said to him, who are you angry with? He said, me. And I said, what are you angry about? And he said, I could have turned around and looked. But at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, I assumed that the baby was in bed, and so I didn't look. But he said, ultimately, it was an act of carelessness. And so I'm angry with myself and I can never take it back. So we were able to work with that guy and say, well, just tell us everything about how you feel about that. So he went into how he'd suffered for the years because even though the child only got a couple of broken legs, who's ever going to say that's good? But, the child was not killed. So couple of broken legs and the child recovered. But every time that kid looks like limping, this guy goes through the agony again. And so he relives it all the time. So what we got him to do was talk about how many occasions he's felt the guilt. Well, it's every time the kid goes to footy. It's every time the kid stands up and gives a speech at school. Basically, every time that child moves, that father goes through the whole thing again because he can't forgive himself because he should have looked, in his opinion.
Yeah.
So when we got him to tell us a story, we had to keep encouraging him and say, when else do you feel this? And he'd go, I don't know. And someone in the crowd would say, well, what about at soccer? And so, oh yeah, oh gosh, shit, and away you go again. So it takes a community poking and prodding with someone that they feel connected to enough to know there's more in there, we've got to get it, for your good, we've got to get it out.
Yep.
And I'm willing to wear the possible criticism from you for me poking and prodding to get it out because I reckon it's worth it for you, because I care about you. So this works better in families, but families are not necessarily blood related. Within families you'll find that, there are not necessarily the connections we would hope. And so sometimes families are families of choice.
Yep.
Nevertheless, there are important people in your life. You can be vulnerable with them and they can be vulnerable with you. That is life-saving strategy.
Yep. Okay, so we've talked about the big five. Can you quickly just give us some practical tools to deal with, I guess, particularly anger? And I know that you have a really good analogy that you talk about with a cup inside you and how that fills up.
Yeah, essentially, the way to talk about this is with emotions. We either express them, meaning we get them out, or we suppress them, meaning we bottle them up. And so I talk about this cup, and it's your anger cup, and or your anger bucket. Probably out in the Gidgee, there's anger buckets. So what happens is that every bit that I can't get out because I'm talking to the bank manager or the school principal or my boss or someone that I can't be angry with, then every bit that I can't get out goes in here, and the cup or the bucket fills up one day. So in my life, my bucket might be full by the time I'm 20 years old. Your bucket might take you till you're 50 or never get filled because it's so individual. But once it's full, then some little thing's going to happen, it's going to overflow. And so, we get couples come to us all the time and they're going to get divorced about the toothpaste tube being squeezed in the middle. Trust me, it's not the toothpaste tube being squeezed in the middle, it's all the other stuff in the cup, and the toothpaste tube was the trigger. So with all 5 of the big 5, we've got the cup and the trigger.
Yep.
And so that's why you're going to have someone 3 years from now, after all of this, the sadness is built up because the sadness cup was 3/4 full today.
Yep.
A few more things happen in their life, and 2 or 3 years from now, the sadness cup's full, and then something's moderately sad happens. I talk about run over the cat, but could be anything simple, and then boom, the sadness cup overflows, and that person cries and cries and cries and cries and can't stop it and can't explain it. The anger bucket, when that overflows, they spit the dummy and can't explain it.
Yep.
Later on, feel guilty about it.
Yep.
Knowing that they should be better than that. The same with fear. People with fear, that when that bucket overflows, we get panic attacks, and once again, the characteristic can't explain it.
Yep.
When the shame bucket overflows, can't explain it.
Yep.
When the guilt bucket overflows, can't explain it. No logic behind it. The bucket's full, and anything going on around us is. Therefore, what we have to do is we have to decrease the level in the bucket. The way we do that is with anger work. That's choosing to go and do some anger releasing.
Yep.
So, in the city, we tell people go to the gym and find a punching bag and punch that. Out in the bush, it's, there's a million ways to do that.
So, and just quickly, how would you tell someone to do that?
In terms of the anger work?
Yeah, the anger work. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that are really angry right now.
Okay. And with good cause, I would suggest. The quickest and simplest and the easiest way is to hop off the lounge, turn around, hop on your knees, and hit the lounge like that.
Yep.
With an outward expression on the air leaving your lungs.
Yep.
So that's breathe in on the backstroke. Doesn't matter which hand, doesn't matter 2 hands, whatever. The whole idea is that if you do that with a bit of restraint,
Yep.
then that allows your body to warm up. And so if you do 2 to 3 minutes of that, that'll be plenty. You'll be all hot and bothered. Catch your breath and then go for it full out. And that's just hit it as hard as you can, yell as loud as you can until you don't want to anymore. Characteristically, what you'll see when someone's emptied the anger bucket, and by the way, you can't just do this once, right? This needs to be a lifetime, once a month thing. But once the anger bucket is empty, you'll see them do this. I go, I don't know why, but that feels good.
Yep.
The same thing with a good cry. If you come across someone and you say, was that cry that you had, was that a good cry? I go, yeah, that was a good cry. You say, what's a good cry? And they go, I don't know. But they go, at the end of it.
Yep.
The same with the paralysis comes from the panic attacks. When it's over, you'll see this big sigh. I feel better. I don't know why I feel better. So do the work until the sigh comes.
Yep.
And then wait till next time and be ready to go again.
And so another tool or strategy that you've used in the past is writing things down. When would you use that?
When it's not practical to hit the lounge or hit the punching bag or whatever, for a lot of people, what they'll say is, well, but I don't feel angry right now. I say, okay, grab a pen and paper and start writing. Write to the bank manager, that'll get you going. If not, write to the politicians, whatever. Don't post these letters. But for many people, journaling, what we call journaling, is just stream of consciousness. Just write whatever's there. Yep. Some people actually find it easier to write with the hand that they don't normally use. Somehow it taps into the subconscious. Some people that doesn't work at all, so you just got to try that and just, basically the bottom line is the healing is in the expression of the feeling. Journaling is just as good as hitting the lounge or the punching bag. For kids who can't name the emotion that they're feeling, there's no use saying to a child, "Are you angry?" when they don't know what that word relates to. We just give them big sheets of paper and crayons and say, "Draw how you feel."
Yep.
And, pretty obvious what they're feeling, but it allows them to get that out of their system.
Yep.
So that's been a technique for kids, kids going through trauma the last 50 or 60 years, is some form of art expression. So whether it's crayons and paper, whether it's paint or whatever, it depends on whoever. Singing, dancing,
whatever the kid's into.
Whatever the kid's into.
Yep. Okay. And so when dealing with managing emotions, do you treat children differently to how you treat adults?
Yeah, because children don't have the language to describe. A lot of men don't have the language to describe what they're feeling. They know what they're feeling, but don't know what the words are.
Yep.
Well, children is even more so. So we just bypass the what are the words and just go to the expression of. Okay. So kids are really good. When you say, "Do you want to punch a punching bag?" they know straight away. Yeah, I do. They're nearly into it before you get there, you know. Do you want to have a cry? Yes, I do, Mummy. And away they go. So kids are Kids are much easier to deal with than adults.
Yep. And so in this particular event with what's happened in far northwest Queensland, and I guess even the children who are on the land who are affected by drought and things like that, they are seeing some pretty horrific things for a child, and some children are going to find that really hard to process. How important is it for parents to be open with their children about how they're feeling and their emotions?
I would say it's like 100% important. So what I mean by that is that when you don't tell your children what you are putting up with, what load you are carrying, they don't know what the load is. They know there's something wrong, but they don't know what's wrong. They automatically assume it's them.
Yep.
So, children who lose parents under the age of about 10, parents killed in a car smash, those children are likely to blame themselves and say, if I'd have loved them more, they'd still be here. If I'd have behaved better, they'd still be here. So kids would irrationally blame themselves. Therefore, you have to tell them what you're going through for two reasons. Number one, so that they don't start blaming themselves. But number two, so that you can teach them to be emotionally literate. Otherwise, they're going to grow up and not be able to express how they feel as well. And we've got another adult who has got a heap of feelings they can't express. It's all bottled up in the cups inside. And we've got to go searching for a solution to make that a viable person in our community.
Yep. And sometimes kids can link, so you may have told your child off earlier for doing something that they shouldn't have been, like drawing on the carpet or something. And then later on they might see you crying in your bedroom because you're really upset with what's happening and what's going on. And they say, well, Mummy, what's wrong? And you just say, oh, nothing, I'm okay, I'm just sad. Like, what impact does that have on the child?
Well, basically the impact we talked about is that they go, okay, so Mum's crying because I drew on the carpet. They just skip a couple of links that... And they're not really skipping links, it's that we haven't told them.
Yep.
So they go from that to that, they just put the two together and away they go. Or they randomly join things that are not together. So Mum's crying because Dad hasn't been around for a few days, or because Dad yelled at her, or whatever. So, you'll find kids as young as 4 or 5 saying to themselves, I'm never going to be like him, or I'm never going to be like her, meaning their mum or their dad, simply because they misinterpreted what was going on. I'm a big fan of mums and dads need to argue in front of the kids, but they need to take care of each other in the arguing so that the children see that you can argue and you can be friends. Mum and dad need to kiss and cuddle in front of the kids so that children see that displays of affection are normal, that we do that because we like each other. Otherwise, they grow up and think that, displays of affection are kind of wrong or not right or something, and that creates all sorts of issues.
And so it's really important for parents to use the correct language.
Correct language is super important.
Yep.
So just get on with it as early as you can. As soon as you figure your kids can understand, you start telling them.
Yep.
So that's a matter of, if for example, one of your kids came to you and said, what are you doing, Mum? And you're punching the punching bag, you say, well, I'm really angry about something that happened today. You may tell them what that is or may not, but I'm really angry about it. And so that I don't be angry with you, I'm just being angry with the bag. Get it out of my system so we can have a great day.
Yep. Okay. So it's being really honest, open and honest.
open and honest is what's going to work.
Okay. So really the important thing in all of this is that the healing is in the expression of the feeling.
Basically, if you want to summarise the last 20 minutes, then the healing is in the expression of the feeling. You have to get it out of your system, or you're going to carry it around and you're going to inadvertently inflict it on others in moments of weakness.
Okay, thanks.